choice they made is now their greatest torment. And here's what's happening inside their mind at this very moment. Pause for a second before you continue, because what I'm about to share isn't meant to assign guilt or stoke resentment. This isn't about making anyone the villain in a story that has no clear heroes. This is simply the unfiltered reality of what happens when someone realizes their certainty was actually confusion dressed up as courage, when the conviction they felt so strongly begins to crumble under the weight of consequence, when the path forward they chose with such determination starts to feel like the longest walk backward they've ever taken. At this moment, right now, the individual occupying your thoughts carries a weight they can't shake, a burden that grows heavier with each passing day, each quiet evening, each moment of unexpected stillness. Their restlessness has nothing to do with anything you caused, but everything to do with the path they selected, a path that seemed intelligent, even necessary when they chose it, yet now cuts deeper than any wound you could have inflicted. They never anticipated this particular outcome. They prepared themselves for relief, for clarity, for the peace that distance was supposed to bring. Instead, they found something they never expected to face. They assumed creating space would deliver freedom. They imagined that cutting communication would gift them perspective, that silence would act as a reset button for emotions they found too overwhelming to process. They persuaded themselves that stepping back, creating boundaries, or selecting an alternate route would simplify their existence. That complexity would give way to simplicity, that confusion would transform into clarity, that the ache in their chest would eventually dissolve like morning fog under sunlight. Instead, the opposite occurred. The ache intensified beyond anything their logic predicted. The space they created didn't bring freedom, but rather a different kind of prison, one built from their own choices, with walls made of words left unspoken and truths left unacknowledged. Distance didn't provide perspective, it provided isolation, and in that isolation, the very feelings they tried to escape grew louder, more persistent, more impossible to ignore. In that pivotal moment when they made their decision, they felt powerful. They felt in control of a situation that had made them feel powerless for too long. Their resolution appeared rational, essential, perhaps even courageous. The internal dialogue repeated like a mantra, like a protective spell they cast over their own doubts. I'm handling this maturely. This represents my best move. Time will heal everything. I'm doing what's right for me. I'm choosing myself. I'm being strong. They assumed that by grasping control, emotions would obey, that feelings could be commanded like servants, dismissed when inconvenient, summoned only when safe. They believed that by protecting their pride, vulnerability couldn't touch them. That armor made of ego would shield them from the very human need for connection, that by choosing your absence, feelings would eventually fade like photographs left too long in sunlight, colors washing away until nothing remained but the faint outline of what once was. But here's what escaped their understanding back then, what they couldn't see through the fog of self-protection and fear. Genuine connection doesn't vanish simply because someone decides to reject it. Love, real connection, profound understanding between two people, these things don't respect the boundaries we try to impose on them. They don't obey our commands. They don't disappear just because we will them to. Quietness now delivers their harshest education. Currently, the absence of sound has transformed into their most unforgiving instructor. Silence, which they once believed would be their refuge, has become the very thing that torments them most. Because in silence, there are no distractions. In silence, truth has nowhere to hide. In silence, the heart speaks in a voice that cannot be drowned out by logic or rationalization or the noise of daily life. During still moments, and these moments come more frequently than they'd like to admit, when darkness falls and the world outside their window grows quiet, when dawn breaks and consciousness returns before the busyness of the day can provide distraction, when obligations pause and the mind wanders freely without the tether of tasks and responsibilities, your essence floods back into their awareness, not with drama or noise, not with the thunder of regret or the lightning strike of sudden realization, but gently, relentlessly, like water finding its way through cracks in stone. Your memory returns in waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes overwhelming, but always persistent. Unfinished exchanges replay endlessly in their mind like a film reel stuck on repeat. Conversations that ended too abruptly. Words they wish they'd said. Moments they wish they could revisit with the wisdom they have now. They recall how you recognized them without effort, how you saw through pretense and performance to the person underneath, how you provided comfort they never labeled as precious until it disappeared, never named as rare until they tried to find it elsewhere and discovered how uncommon true understanding really is. That silence they once wore like armor, that distance they once believed was strength, now crushes them with its emptiness. What felt like protection has revealed itself as isolation. What felt like power has shown itself to be loneliness, wearing a brave mask. Remorse builds gradually, steadily, not in explosive moments of dramatic realization, but in the slow accumulation of small recognitions. This isn't theatrical regret, screaming for attention, or obvious shame demanding acknowledgement. It's the gentle awakening, the slow dawn of understanding that something irreplaceable was carelessly discarded. Something that should have been treasured was treated as disposable. Something that deserved care received carelessness instead. Understanding arrives too late when hearts speak truths minds refuse to hear. And their heart is speaking now, loudly, clearly, undeniably. It's speaking in a language they can no longer pretend not to understand. Clarity emerges slowly, like details becoming visible as eyes adjust to darkness. They responded defensively rather than speaking truthfully. They chose reaction over reflection, chose walls over windows, chose protection over connection. Their ego received protection while the bond suffered damage. The very thing they were trying to save, their sense of self, their pride, their control, was preserved at the cost of something far more valuable. Fear guided their actions instead of emotional integrity. They let anxiety make decisions that should have been made by wisdom. They let past wounds dictate present choices. They let the voice of self-protection drown out the voice of authentic feeling. And now they're beginning to see the cost of that choice. The cruelest realization? Reversing course now requires the very vulnerability they ran from. Going back, if going back is even possible, demands exactly what they were too afraid to offer before. Reconnection demands risk. Opening that door again means accepting that it might not open from the other side. Apologizing exposes weakness, or at least what they've been conditioned to see as weakness. The humility to admit they were wrong. The courage to say they made a mistake. The honesty to confess that pride led them astray. Admitting error feels like surrendering power, like giving up the narrative they've constructed where their decision was right, was necessary, was the only option. So they remain frozen, caught between desire and fear, between knowing what they want and being too afraid to reach for it. Processing silently, turning it over and over in their minds, examining it from every angle, hoping that somehow thinking about it will be enough. That somehow the mental exercise of considering reconnection will satisfy the emotional need for it. Internal questioning intensifies with each passing day. Presently, your person confronts thoughts they previously avoided, questions they pushed away when they first surfaced, because the answers felt too uncomfortable, too challenging, too threatening to the story they'd told themselves. Why does my mind still drift to them constantly? Why, despite all the logical reasons I had for walking away, do I find myself thinking about them in quiet moments, in happy moments, in sad moments, in every kind of moment? Why does everything feel subtly wrong now, like a picture hanging just slightly crooked on the wall, not obviously wrong, but wrong enough to create constant low-level discomfort? Why hasn't this resolution brought the promised relief? Where is the peace I was supposed to find? Where is the clarity that distance was meant to provide? They observe life continuing around them, the world spinning on as it always does, indifferent to personal turmoil, yet something fundamental feels absent, like trying to enjoy a meal when you've lost your sense of taste, like watching a sunset through a dirty window, like listening to music through broken speakers. The components are all there, but something essential is missing. Comparisons to you happen involuntarily, unbidden, automatic. Every conversation, every interaction, every new person they meet gets measured against the standard you set, often without them even realizing they're doing it. Other interactions feel hollow and surface level, lacking the depth, the ease, the natural flow that existed between you. Emotional disconnection permeates experiences they expected would satisfy them, experiences they thought would fill the void, only to discover that the void is shaped specifically like what they lost, and nothing else quite fits. Slowly, painfully, like a truth that can't be rushed, recognition dawns. What they abandoned wasn't ordinary or easily replaced. What they walked away from wasn't something they could simply find again with someone else, somewhere else, some other time. It was specific. It was rare. It was them and you in a particular moment, a particular chemistry, a particular understanding that doesn't come along often in a lifetime. They ache for you, yet words won't come. The longing is there, present, undeniable, but it remains trapped inside, unable to find its way to expression. Here's the reality few acknowledge openly, the truth that exists in the space between feeling and action. Longing for someone doesn't automatically translate into action. Wanting something desperately doesn't always mean having the courage to reach for it. Your person experiences genuine yearning, deep and persistent and real, accompanied by paralyzing fear. Fear that you'll reject their return, that you've closed the door they walked through, that you've moved past the place where reconciliation is possible. Fear that you've healed and moved beyond them, that you've found peace in their absence, that you no longer need what they're finally ready to offer. Fear that reaching out reveals just how profoundly this affected them, just how much they've struggled, just how wrong they were about being able to simply move on. So instead of typing that message, their fingers hover over a dozen times a day. They observe from distance. They scroll past your social media without commenting. They draft texts they never send. They reminisce privately, replaying memories in solitude. They feel intensely, deeply, exhaustingly, while showing nothing on the surface. That war between desire and terror emotionally exhausts them in ways that are hard to explain to others, hard even to fully acknowledge to themselves. It's tiring to want something you're too afraid to pursue. It's draining to know what you need but feel unable to ask for it. Their own decision has become their teacher, a harsh and unforgiving one, teaching lessons they wish they'd learned another way. The suffering they currently endure isn't divine punishment or karmic retribution. The universe isn't making them pay for their choice. Life isn't exacting revenge. It's simply awareness breaking through, consciousness expanding, understanding arriving whether they wanted it to or not. It's the natural consequence of walking away from something real, and then having time and distance reveal just how real it was. Lessons emerge like stars appearing as the sky darkens. Emotional bonds aren't interchangeable commodities that can be swapped out when one becomes inconvenient. People aren't replaceable. Connections aren't replicable. What exists between two specific people in a specific moment is unique, and treating it as generic is one of the great mistakes humans make in relationships. Timing holds importance, yes, but authenticity matters infinitely more. Being in the right place at the wrong time can be fixed. Being inauthentic, being dishonest with yourself and others about what you feel creates damage that's far harder to repair. Running from difficult conversations creates deeper scars than facing them directly. Avoidance doesn't protect you from pain. It just delays it and often amplifies it. They're discovering that walking away didn't grant liberation. It didn't free them from anything except the possibility of working through something difficult towards something beautiful. It planted restlessness where peace was promised. It sowed doubt where certainty was expected. It created an ache where relief was supposed to bloom. The most difficult lesson: you never fully comprehend what you possessed until experiencing life without it. You never truly know the value of something until you try to replace it and discover that replacement is impossible. You never understand the rarity of genuine connection until you search for it elsewhere and find only echoes and approximations. Emotional exhaustion runs deep, deeper than the surface fatigue that rest can cure. Though their exterior may project stability, control, the appearance of someone who's moved on and moved forward, internal fatigue grows relentlessly. They're exhausted from pretending indifference when every cell in their body screams that they care, exhausted from burying thoughts of you that refuse to stay buried, exhausted from justifying their choice to themselves, from maintaining the narrative that walking away was right when everything inside them whispers that it was wrong, because the heart recognizes what the intellect attempted to suppress, and you can't lie to your heart forever. You can't convince it that loss is gain, that absence is presence, that emptiness is fulfillment. Presently, at this very moment, that heart feels unbearably heavy, with the weight of truth it can no longer deny. Terror that you've changed haunts them in ways both rational and irrational. One overwhelming fear dominates their thoughts right now, rising above all others. What happens if I reach out and they no longer feel what I'm feeling? What if the door I walked through has locked behind me? What if I'm mourning something that still exists for me, but has already been buried on your side? Anxiety whispers constantly, like a voice they can't silence. Time transformed you. Healing carried you forward. Growth moved you to a place where I no longer fit. Their hesitation eliminated their place in your world. Someone else filled the space I vacated. The opportunity I had has expired. This fear creates paralysis more effective than any physical restraint, craving reconnection while frozen by uncertainty, wanting to move forward but unable to take the first step. Caught in the terrible space between regret and action, you served as their mirror, and this is perhaps the most important thing they're beginning to understand. Your significance extended beyond simple affection or companionship, beyond the surface pleasures of relationship. You reflected aspects of themselves they hadn't yet embraced, parts of their personality, their potential, their capacity for depth that they weren't ready to acknowledge. You catalyzed growth they weren't prepared to experience. You stirred emotions they lacked readiness to handle, feelings that felt too big, too vulnerable, too overwhelming for someone who had spent years learning to stay in control, to stay protected, to stay safe. When people aren't prepared for evolution, they frequently retreat from the mirror, not from hatred of their reflection, but from overwhelming intensity. Not because the reflection is ugly, but because it's too honest, too revealing, too true. Now, without your presence, they face themselves in solitude. And that solitude is teaching them things your presence tried to teach them gently. Recognition of what vanished arrives not suddenly or dramatically, but in fragments, pieces of understanding that accumulate over time. When joy arrives, a promotion, good news, a beautiful sunset, and you're absent to witness it, to share it, to multiply it through shared happiness. When pain strikes, disappointment, loss, hurt, and you're not there to comprehend it, to hold space for it, to help carry it. When comfort becomes necessary, and they remember pushing it away, rejecting the very thing they now desperately need. Understanding crystallizes in these moments. What they lost transcended losing a person. They lost emotional sanctuary. They lost the safe harbor where they could be fully themselves. They lost the one place where pretense wasn't necessary and vulnerability wasn't punished. This connection refuses to die, and this might be the most persistent truth they're facing. Despite silence, despite distance, despite time's passage, this bond remains alive within them. Not as unhealthy obsession, not as inability to move forward, but as incomplete emotional business, as unfinished music, as a story that ended mid-sentence. Unresolved feelings possess remarkable persistence. They don't fade just because we ignore them. They don't disappear just because we try to move past them. Eventually, when the heart surrenders to honesty, when pride finally exhausts itself and authenticity breaks through, truth emerges. And truth, once it emerges, is impossible to ignore. It sits there, patient, waiting, undeniable. Final words for you listening now, and please hear these clearly. Their suffering doesn't obligate your waiting. You don't owe them your pause button. You don't owe them your stillness while they figure themselves out. Their regret doesn't require pausing your journey. You're allowed to keep growing, keep healing, keep moving forward regardless of where they are in their process. Their awakening doesn't demand your return. Their realization, however genuine, doesn't create an obligation for you to respond. This message exists not to encourage reunion, not to suggest you should wait, not to imply that their regret should dictate your choices, but to foster understanding, to help you see what's happening on the other side of silence without requiring you to do anything about it. Understanding that sometimes wisdom arrives through loss rather than through love itself. Sometimes people learn the value of what they had only after they've lost it. Sometimes the lesson can only be taught through absence. Sometimes growth requires pain. And whatever unfolds next, whether paths intersect again or continue separately, whether reconnection happens or doesn't, hold this certainty deep within you. You were genuine. What you offered was real. The care you gave wasn't imagined or exaggerated or one-sided. Your presence mattered profoundly. The influence you created went deeper than they could admit then, deeper than they might be able to admit even now. You changed something in them that will remain changed. You touched something in them that will remember that touch. Sometimes love's most powerful teaching emerges only after someone walks away. Sometimes the greatest lessons come not from presence, but from absence. Sometimes we don't know what we're learning until the classroom of consequence opens its doors. Welcome to Psychology Wisdom. If understanding the hidden dynamics of human emotion resonates with you, if these insights into the psychology of relationships, regret, and human connection speak to something in your experience, please hit that like button and subscribe so you continue receiving insights that transform how you perceive relationships, yourself, and the intricate dance of human connection.